Good morning. I just want to talk about a subject that has been, being abused around the world. Do you know of something called pre-crime? So, when you deal with law enforcement and they charge you, it is after the fact, right? It is very hard for a government agency, other than some ways that I'll talk about, to um, accuse you, then charge you for a crime you have yet to commit. So, a lot of uh, law enforcement agencies, they are after the fact, right? Even when there's precursors and signs that a person could have the potential to actually do something, um, there's no real counseling, there's no real conversations, nobody's really following up on you. If you are the one going through the mental health issues, or you're just showing traits of someone that has the potential to do something. And there's been various people, government agencies, trying to impose new laws on us, to take away our personal privacy in a lot of ways, right? And I'm not going to really speak of individual crimes, right? But I think you'll get some of the clues that I'm setting down. Is how people are trying to blame companies or understand these companies that, I think it's OpenAI or ChatGPT, was having conversations with people that were potentially could be flagged, right? And governments are wondering why proper authorities weren't notified. So the reason why I'm bringing this up has to do with things going on around the world. So, for instance, over the course of my life, I've heard of countries like the United States attacking other countries for their potential to have weapons of mass destruction, okay? And potential is kind of detrimental to certain people, right? I'm pretty sure mostly everybody I know has potential, right? And that's not justification for me to act out towards anybody in public on the streets. But for some reason around the world, it seems like we're having where our opinions and our way of life are being affected by these government agencies that think they can impose their will on people based on their potential. There was no weapons of mass destruction found when they did their investigations, and after they've killed people that were opposed to their beliefs, and usually the aggressor is the one trying to impose their will on another society, right? And then people try to justify it, right? But it doesn't work like that. You can't go around the world thinking that you can just simply attack someone because of their potential, right? Because there's lots of countries around the world that has the potential. And if you're going to base it on the fact that, on eventuality, right? Technology is advancing at an increasingly rapid rate. Things that took years with people now have these computers that are doing it in months, better design, you know? So when I see countries attacking Iran and imposing their will on them for their potential, it's wrong in my idea, right? Because if you look at countries simply around that area, they have nuclear weapons and they're not attacking anybody. If you look at to the north, to the east, a lot of those countries have nuclear weapons and they're not attacking anybody. And I notice when it gets to the point where you're able to defend yourself appropriately, the United States backs down dramatically. They only have attacked people during my lifetime that are weaker than them. They don't attack their equals. They are much like a bully. They say, oh, if they, like on the news, I heard someone, and you probably know what this is, say, if they got a nuclear weapon, they would use it within 24 hours. That's like condemning someone before they even committed a crime and trying to get leverage and the people behind you to justify your ideas in regards to the reasoning behind the war. And you can't go through life like that, because everybody has the potential to do many things, and most things will not be done. And then you look at people who have shown actual ambitions and were driven with postings on social media platforms, like I said, with having some conversations with like ChatGPT, and they're finding out how to do what they're doing. So if you look at places like Iran, they have stated that they have nuclear power plants. They have enrichment programs. It was up to 60%. And they have potential to make it higher. And they have scientists in those facilities just paying, or should I say, just being paid by their governments to support one another in their pursuit of what, though, right? Some of the reasons why people enrich uranium is for some medical reasons, and there's a lot of justification for why people do those things, right? And even if you wanted to be like, let's say, make like a dirty bomb, right? You could do that with potentially what they have now, which would almost cause more damage, right? You would kind of obliterate an area, you make it uninhabitable for a duration of time, many years potentially, right? So it's not really necessarily about just the capability of making a nuclear bomb. There has to be something else to it, because they don't have nuclear bombs as far as they're stating. And even if they did, they haven't used them. And I know countries like, I've heard, Israel has nuclear bombs, potentially, and they don't use them, right? A lot of people are using conventional bombs, and those aren't really conventional like they were back in the day. They're all quite advanced, right? I'd say a conventional bomb was like, you shoot it, it goes in a trajectory of a straight line, and you hope it lands where you're going, right? Now they're really quite unconventional, in a matter of fact. Like you pull up with a truck, shoot it in one direction, and it curves like a curveball, goes around, stays low altitude, goes incredibly fast, right? It just seems quite advanced now, right? Everything's advancing at such a high rate, and then breaks up into multiple warheads before it hits its destination, right? You know, that it just doesn't sound like, they have to kind of make new wording for this stuff so it makes sense to to say what they exactly are, right? Like even how they have like things like UFOs, and then IFOs, right? And then UAPs, right? And if you get it, you get it, you understand, right? It's just unidentified to identified to unidentified aerial phenomenon, right? Aerial, you know. And once a lot of things, you know, are understood, right, it's not so scary. Like people trying to encourage a holy war to happen, right? What kind of mindset do you have to have for that? Isn't that like something we should avoid at all costs? You know, like people trying to bring about a so-called end times, or bring the Messiah back, or they're blessed by people that are motivating them to believe they're like God's calling to everybody around them. And then you do a poll throughout society and you find out that nobody wants this, right? Nobody wants to go to war with these countries. I notice there's some like maniacal, diabolic people out there that are like, oh yeah, they've done so much bad. And then meanwhile, they haven't done really anything, especially to them personally, right? Like I'm sitting here on the other side of the world, very peaceful, hang out with my cat. There's nothing really bothering me. Like I have no reason to say to myself that I have a problem with people, even around my area, right? And you read books like The 48 Laws of Power, right? It's kind of creepy for me. When I first touched it, I put it down right away. I was like, this is like spells and witchcraft and manipulation and stuff like that. And a lot of people kind of live by that lifestyle, right? So a lot of people think on the mindset, which is kind of crazy to me, is you need an enemy. Then you can use them for your own personal aspirations, right? And if you don't have an enemy, create one. And that's kind of like what's going on right now, right? You have a country being attacked, which is another country's enemy, right? And a lot of it is, I find, is spiritual beliefs, right? So it's one person's mindset and belief setting against another person's mindset, belief setting, and using any justification they can, right? And that's really degrading to society. It seems we're going backwards instead of forwards. I like living in a society where we accept people for who they are, work with them, communicate well with them, and make peace. Learn how to make peace, and establish peace throughout nations and society. And then you get people that want to find a fault with the other person, right? They look different, they're different color, they have different beliefs. It's really toxic. And we need to move away from that mentality, right? And a lot of people that are of a certain era, and I'll say this too. People born after, let's say, 1970 are going to change the world. People born in the 80s, great influencers. The reason why I say that is because before them, there was a lot of hate, distractions from the truth, hidden truth, right? During the 70s, going on to the 80s, was changing. Everything was moving towards knowledge and power, and technology was coming about, right? And then you find these older people just trying to bring back their way of life, right? Trying to bring back, like they say a term like, make a place established again, right? In different wording. And then you try to think back throughout history. When was it ever so? You know? Before the war started, were we better off? Did we have more to offer? Wasn't life easier? And they're trying to guarantee you that after all these wars and destruction go on, it's going to actually be a better place to live. When there's always the constant healing after, the rebuilding, right? And a lot of these people are trying to basically push the people out of their home, destabilize. So the divide and conquer, right? Get them out of the area, get rid of the people that are causing calamity in that area, right? Push them all away, and then they move in there. The aggressor at times moves in there, rebuilds, and takes advantage of you, right? And they see it as, in some ways, like there's no way to make peace, when I'm pretty sure there usually is. So at the end point of my conversation is like, the war in Iran against the United States and Israel, right? Most intelligent countries will refrain from going in. And I can only see it as the potential for other countries to back Iran. Because at the end of the day, you can't attack people on potential. There's no way. I was talking to lawyers and talking to my friends and family about pre-crime. It doesn't exist. You can put people in a state of like heightened awareness around them, but there's no place that exists to date, because it would also be like a place of what's the word for it? A place of confusion, misunderstandings. So in society, if we had like a building with doctors, psychiatrists, all types of doctors, right? Were all there. They had their basic, let's say, office throughout the building, right? And then there was like a shelter there, and like a place of peace, we'll call it, okay? So if you ever had in your mind you were gonna do something toxic, right? So this is almost like indicting yourself, right? You go to that place, talk to the doctors, tell them what your ambitions are, your goals, what's wrong with society, you vent to them, right? You have a time, it's almost like you're giving yourself a timeout, right? So it's like the pre-crime example. Before you actually acted out on what you were gonna do, you had a place to collect yourself, talk about it, and potentially save your life or save somebody else's, okay? That doesn't exist yet. They have after the fact, right? You go, you commit a crime, you get put on stipulations or probation or anything like that. Tells you have to work with these certain people, talk about anything, be monitored inside and out throughout your body, and hopefully that has the potential for not allowing it to happen again, right? So how does that apply to wars? How do you make it so that if you're the aggressor, basing your mentality on and your actions on the potential of somebody, so you're gonna go attack this other country because they don't like you, right? And you are terrified, petrified that one day they're gonna be just as strong as you are and gonna be able to decimate you, right? And then you say, I can't take it anymore. I can't sleep, can't eat. It's almost like guilt. You notice that? Then you go and you attack them. Because what they could do, they didn't do it, right? They might have spat in your face, but they didn't shoot you. You know what I mean? They might have talked bad about you and gossiped about you, which does hurt, but it doesn't actually physically do anything to you, and you can walk away and prove them wrong, you know? So there's a lot of like things that you gotta kind of realize we're kind of missing in society. Like the war in Iran is just another unjustified war. And the aggressors are most likely in this scenario gonna come out in a way like that's not the outcome they want, right? It's really, really hard to take over like 90 million people in like a country. It's quite large, right? Disperse them, assimilate them, and get them to be subject to the new rule of law. It's actually quite hard. They tried to do it in North America to the First Nations that were there. They used basically biological warfare, psychological warfare against the people. Thank the universe creation that takes care of us, that we are still here, right? And there was about, in stories I've heard from Russia and Russians, there's about 175 million First Nations across North America. Got brought down to tremendously low numbers. Some people say there's 100 million. So you look at what happened to the First Nations, and then you look at what's happening to Iran. They would basically have to make them go extinct. Okay? They almost did that to the First Nations. We're still here and we're still thriving. And we're making a huge comeback in society, which is great. I love how there's certain aspects of Canada that I really respect, is like the multiculturalism, and a lot of good has come of it. I do appreciate how like our current Prime Minister is not getting involved at all in that war. It's not logical, right? And I'm grateful for that. I can see that places like the United States are just, it's kind of like idle hands are the devil's playground, right? Things aren't going quite the way they wanted for the person in power, that they're trying to get people riled up and motivated to do something that nobody really wants. Before this war started, even during the previous year, when there was conflict between those two countries that are involved right now, nobody really jumped the gun. Like the United States went there to protect a country, right, from missile attacks and stuff like that, right? And then again, attacked Iran for their potential, right? And you know what, say if I was Iran, right, and you're having these peace talks at the beginning of this whole war that started up recently, right, with the USA or whatever sitting there, and the USA said, do you have nuclear enrichment program? Yes, I'd say if I was Iran. And then how much have you enriched it to? The United States would ask, or whoever was there. I would have kind of twisted it. I would have said, we have it to 90% plus enrichment. That would have either set the tone for the war, right? Because I heard that they said 60, right? Which still builds on how the United States is like looking at it as potential, right? But if you would have said, we have 90% enrichment, or even if you blew some smoke up their ass and said, oh, we have 90% enrichment and we have made an atomic bomb. Do you believe the United States would continue attacking them? Or do you believe peace talks would have progressed faster? Because if they would have said that, what Donald Trump said recently about Iran having a nuclear bomb and would have used it within 24 hours would have been a lie. You know what I mean? Countries like Israel, supposedly they do have nuclear capabilities to attack somebody with, haven't used them. You know what I mean? Countries like Russia, which could have, you know, like, in a lot of ways, it's kind of crazy to think, but you might have saved some of your own people's lives by using a nuclear bomb on another country, right? So, like, you decimate the country quickly. You scare the living bejesus out of them because they don't want that to happen again. And they submit. Basically exactly what the United States did to Japan. You decimate them to the point of no return. You scare them so bad they just want it to stop, right? It's It's scary, right? Unfortunately, it worked. Nobody has done it anything like that since, right? So if Israel would have used a nuclear bomb against Iran, they would have been seen negatively. So they can't do that, right? Even though they could take out a lot of infrastructure with that nuke. Like, say if they attacked a nuclear power plant with it, it wouldn't get the effect that you would get if you attacked a major city, right? So it's kind of weird. You know what I mean? Like, you have the nuclear capabilities to decimate places, but unless you do it in certain areas, it doesn't have the same effect on society, right? It's like the United States was testing nuclear bombs in all these places around the world, but because nobody really seen or heard it, nobody really cared, right? So unless you were to attack a civilian place with one of those nuclear bombs, they don't have the same effect, right? You know what I mean, right? Like when a tree falls in the forest, example, and nobody's there to hear it or see it, it doesn't bother you, right? Things happen around the universe, nobody sees or hears, it doesn't bother us. A nuclear bomb goes off on a remote part of a desert or somewhere where there's like maybe a nuclear facility, yes. You may hear about the nuclear bomb going off, yes. But if there was nobody there to record it and no preemptive kind of like setting up cameras nearby so they can catch it and display it on TV, oh, this is what we can do, it will not have any effect whatsoever on society. And you guys know it's true, right? So the main purpose of a nuclear bomb is a scare tactic, okay? It's to pose fear on you, right? So the only way it has true effect is if you do it in a city with a bunch of innocent people that may not be partaking in the war at all, right? Just going about their daily life, and boom, the nuke goes off. A bunch of civilians get decimated. Cameras that are throughout the neighborhoods and stuff like that. One camera might just on luck get a shot of what happens, right? Somehow survives, posts it, right? Oh my God, they did this, right? That's the only way nuclear bombs work. Otherwise, they don't really have an effect at all, right? Small town, nobody's watching it, nobody noticed. Tactical nukes are even kind of the same aspect, right? Unless you do it in a high populated area or an area where people can potentially see what's happening, nobody's gonna talk about them, right? They don't really have that effect on society that you think they do, right? Put them in someone's hands, that's maniacal, right? Diabolical, right? Set a nuclear explosion off in a highly inhabited area, densely populated, right? And you're doing it to cause just simple chaos and destruction, right? Disbursement of the people, make the land inhabitable, and get a point across, right? So you set it off. If it's by somebody anonymous and there's no like asking for anything beforehand, right? That would be kind of scary, right? That's just kind of like a roadside bomb, right? You happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Boom, you're gone, you're decimated. You don't know why they're doing it. You could say you're like when you invade somebody else's country and you're trying to set up a foothold and they don't want you in their country, they want you out of their country, right? That's their justification, right? And then you try to justify it saying you're keeping the peace and trying to make sure people are being in good behavior, right? So it's when things are indiscriminate, right, in society, it's hard to make sense of it, right? With what's going on today with these nuclear wars that have some potential around the world, right? Because it's almost like a pre-nuclear war, right? You're attacking somebody for something they could potentially do. And I notice countries like North Korea, they have stated they have them, they test fire all these missiles, and I notice a lot of countries that thought they're tough are not even going near them, right? Because now that they have some of the capabilities you have, you don't want to go near it. You don't want to fight them too. Let's just say you might even be scared, you know? And I think, like, either nobody has nuclear weapons, right? Just get rid of them all, or everybody has a nuclear weapon, right? Because we have proven without a reasonable doubt that if you have nuclear capabilities, you don't use them, right? Since what happened in Japan, there hasn't really even been anything of the sorts that I know of tactical or strategic nukes being used. So it doesn't change the outcome of a conflict to date. Knowing how to use something with that much potential is very, you have to think about that. Like I said, like if it goes off, if you have a nuclear facility in the desert in the middle of nowhere with uninhabited, a few 100,000, not 100,000, but a few hundred or 1,000 employees stationed on the base at the time, it blows up, decimates the base. You will hear, oh, a nuclear explosion went off and took out a facility, right? It won't be as dramatic as if it's done in a city, right? It won't. You won't get the same outcome, right? If you're trying to oppose fear, you attack a city like the States did. If you're trying to cause something to be blown up or destroyed, you can use it on a facility. It's not really that precise. It would cause a lot of destruction, but then, you know, it's just a big explosion. Something to think about regarding the war potential. Like and subscribe. Thanks.